Welcome to the programme. So some bad news to start with. It's 4020 live. The LED board's broken.
Excuse me.
Black.
So the IMG point we gained last week, we've already lost.
It won't connect
we
to
haven't even started.
It won't connect to Bluetooth. It won't connect. So I can't put any funny messages on there this week. So that's.
Do you want the Wi-Fi?
I've turned the Wi-Fi off to try and get it to work, but it's just not working. But that's
a bit like Lee's back division. It's just not working.
Audience figures going through the floor. Welcome to the podcast. It's the celebratory after the semi-finals edition of the program. I'm going to keep trying to get it to work, but it's futile. James Child's going to be here. We think. He's currently at Shepherd's Bush Roundabout.
The phone is on.
So he's going to appear soon. So that will be exciting because we can ask him all the questions about refereeing. I wasn't supposed to do that. It's all right. People can still see us. Refereeing.
If only there were some things to talk about on a refereeing front.
I mean, I've got the Rugby League coaching manual because I want to find out where it says you're supposed to go on the telly before the game and say it's the ref's fault because that's what he pretty much said, wasn't he? That's Dave Drummond. Doing some running.
What is the date of that? Once esteemed publication.
I mean, I assume when we see James Simpson next, he'll have had to read through this completely. 1988.
Yeah, I had to use that for my Barla Level 2 coaching badge.
You could be the next coach of.
Well, I don't think Barla counts anymore.
Does it not?
Yes, did that at Milton Keynes. And do you know who did the course, Level 2? It was over 2 weekends.
2 weekends gone.
Phil Ladder.
There's Sean Edwards, picture of Sean Edwards. And it says here, Sean Edwards, brackets, Wigan and Great Britain, has the total commitment necessary to reach the top. So it's nothing to do with coaching, it's just innate ability. So this you may as well throw away in the bin. Which someone did, which is why I picked it up from those book boxes. Something it says anxiety in here, and that's a bit forward thinking for 1988, isn't it? We're talking about depression and stuff next.
Wow.
Circle frequency of
I have to say that from what I can remember of Phil Larder's coaching on that course, if you weren't of a standard, you had to go and stand on the wing.
No.
It wasn't that inclusive. So, because I remember
my career.
I remember doing it with a couple of London, might have been Crusaders players at the time. One of whom ended up with Dave Rotherham. Ended up being head of England pathways. So all the drills were around the people that could, rather than around the people that couldn't.
Signs of tension. So if you're a coach, you'll be looking for this in your. So if in case you're about to study for your level whatever, Here's signs of tension to look for in athletes. Facial grimaces.
Right.
General body restlessness.
Okay.
Backaches.
Yeah.
Irritable bowel. I don't know how you notice that.
I think they'd have to tell you.
Diarrhea. That one's easier. General irritability. Yep, that's good. Shaking hands. Not shaking hands, but
Shaking hands. Yeah. Hands shaking as opposed to shaking hands.
Excessive sweating. So Prince Andrew would have been a great rugby league player. Unexplained fears. The fear of rejection. That's the Rugby League coaching manual, available now from a bin somewhere.
Aha.
Is it here?
It's here.
So yes, if you just joined us, the LED board has broken, but James Childy's back, so that is the good news for you. Hopefully, I'll get it fixed next week, but it's not. I've got the manual here and everything, but it's not connecting to Bluetooth. So let me take you around what's on the table today. Brand new album out this week by Gavin Sutherland and the Fast Tunes Orchestra. The next programme follows shortly, which is full of brilliant TV music. If you ever wanted a high quality copy of the Yorkshire Television Ident, that's the album for you. The flag of North Korea, because of course Pyongyang, and this Salford Heritage shirt because they're selling off all their stuff because they've got no money. But it's also Sir, for sure, right, and a red stripe for either beer or communism, whichever one you prefer. You're welcome to get involved in the chat as ever on YouTube. I'm in, says Andy. Wire once again proved the doubters wrong. Well, come on to Warrington. Come on to them. Phil says, sounds like being a Salford fan. We're trying to turn it off and on again, but we'll get a payday loan out to pay for a new one. And that's what we'll do. So yes, a busy weekend of action. The semi-finals of the Challenge Cup are done and dusted. We've got the 1895 Challenge Cup, 1895 semi-finals to look forward to. Still got the wheelchair semi-finals. We've got some fancy biscuits, which Phil sent us in, and we saved them for James. I don't know why we saved them for James. And Super League's back at the weekend, but he's coming in now, so be quiet about him. Have you updated your LinkedIn page recently, James?
Yeah, that got updated a while ago.
You're back.
I'm back.
That was quick.
Yes.
Did you?
No.
Oh, it's the fella from.
That was the man
That's
that
what
was here
replaced me
instead
last
of
week.
me.
Yeah, I'm a little bit younger than you. I'm alive for a start.
You survived the Rugby Football League. Have you changed the sport? Have you changed it for the better?
I couldn't do much in a few days. Still been no announcement.
Nothing. Although there's supposed to be, there's talk of a media briefing this week.
Okay.
A media brief?
But what
Should
will be allowed to be...
I release
So
the spoiler?
Exclusive.
I think we need it from...
Exclusive on the programme.
Straight from... I was going to say the horse's mouth, but that sounds derogatory.
So, yes, I was asked to join the board on the basis that clearly the board had basically departed and they have to have a board.
Yep.
As a governing body of the sport,
that's
as
a
you'd
good
imagine.
idea. Yeah.
Well, especially if, for example, a coach makes an allegation, somebody at the governing body has to answer that.
Yeah. So obviously they were, rather than a full recruitment process on the basis that it was an interim board that would only run till July, looking at people that would have necessary skills and attributes to join a board, and they got to the bottom of the list and found me.
Well, they may have found you
to
on,
July.
They may have found you on another board that could transfer their skills across.
Yeah, look, as an ex-RFL employee and somebody that clearly understands the sport, I think one of the criticisms of the previous board, rightly or wrongly from the clubs, was that there were a number of people on there that weren't from rugby league background. So I think they were trying to find some representation that fitted that. Yes, on the inclusion board, former RFL employee, and ultimately I would say, a neutral as they come as a referee.
Did they want that?
It seems not.
So how long were you on the board for?
Didn't really get going.
No.
So I was.
You were named.
No, I was elected to the board, and the press release went out.
Yeah,
but within probably less than a week, I received a phone call from Tony Sutton to basically say,
you've done a great job.
Unless you plus one other resigns, the whole board will go under. And the clubs will veto the whole board again, and it will collapse.
Which I would have taken as a badge of honour.
So I have taken it in some respects. I think, the people that have gone on to the board are effectively those on the working party already. working with Nigel on the review of the sport. So there's a logic to the people on there. I think my comment back to that, however, would be if there's a working party that's reviewing the sport to produce a proposed outcome, who is checking and challenging that process?
The chair of the RFL.
Well, one of the reasons why
there isn't a chair of the RFL.
So on the resolutions with the club, the resolutions of the club basically said that they obviously they wanted Simon to go, didn't they? They wanted, I suppose, effectively, they don't necessarily want a new board, but it's created a vacuum where a new board had to be appointed. And they didn't want new board appointments to be made until the outcome of the working party. Not realising that Nigel couldn't be chair.
Which I think was the assumption.
Which was the assumption, yes. And that shows, I think, naivety.
But also, this outcome will still need to be voted on.
It will be.
And ratified.
Absolutely.
So,
but I think you could say that they clearly got. So
you
the
need a
support of the
board.
clubs.
You need
yes,
an independent board.
You do.
To ratify the report.
And ultimately the sport gets a huge amount of funding through Sport England, and as part of the requirements for all that, you have to have an independent board.
It's not the sport; it's actually the RFL, isn't it, that gets that funding?
Yes, yeah, the governing body.
So some of it's channeled through the foundations
yes.
of clubs, but it's actually money that keeps the RFL
Correct.
going.
And there's a proportion of staff at the RFL that are funded through that money, and they support an important role in the game from top to bottom, really. So there were a couple of things. Nigel couldn't be chair; they didn't realise that. Meant an RFL member needed to be chair, which meant they would have lost control of that board. They then needed control of the board by putting their own people on the board, and there's a limit to the number of people you can have on a board, which meant that they had to lose 2 people that weren't seen to be, this is my interpretation, controllable.
Non-club appointees.
Controllable by those individuals.
But it also means we've lost our seat on the international board at the moment.
Have we?
Because
I thought you meant our seat as a podcast on the board.
No, there isn't a chair of the RFL to step into the position that is left for the chair of the RFL.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure who is chair at the moment.
Well, according to the website, there isn't a chair.
Right.
There is only 1 board member and 2 observer members. But we do know that.
But that's not true. Because
a missive went out to the community game this week.
Yes, I'll read that in a bit.
Which is a very important one about respect for officials, which was delivered and signed by Martin Coit.
Our friend.
Yes, who was on the board.
Who supposedly is on the board but hasn't formally been... Well, he was announced. Yeah.
He might be in charge.
The board is as it was announced, except me. and except I think is it Dermot Power, is it?
Yes.
Why have they picked on you?
I'm going to need.
So Dermot's from ING, I think.
Yeah,
and me.
He's bullying.
So basically, they got rid of the independents.
Well, I don't know. Is IMG considered to be an independent? I mean, they've got vested interest in the game, the consultants, etc. Yeah. Look, I don't know the ins and outs, and the people that have gone on there. This is no slight to the people that have gone on there. They're vastly experienced people. I think my concern, however, was that if you've got a working party reviewing the sport, proposing an outcome, the RFL's board is not a functioning board as I see it, in its true sense of its existence to check and challenge a process, and that's why you have a board, because. I can't remember all the names now, but Lord Kane, is it? Emma Rosewarne, and I can't remember who the other one that's come from the working parties now on the RFL board, which hasn't been announced, but that is the makeup of the board. So I joined one board meeting, at which it was like attending my own funeral, actually. Cause
was there an actual eulogy?
No, it was basically James and Dermot are stepping down from the board, and this is the situation.
Whether they like it or not.
What I did find interesting, though, it was a hastily arranged meeting, and it was a virtual meeting, so there were only a number of people that could attend, and only a certain number of people on camera. But some of those leading voices that you'd have expected to be on camera and speaking didn't speak, which I found enlightening. I don't know. I think
just checking if you're still on the board.
Oh, on the website. I don't think I was ever put on the board on the website. So that announcement, that press release should have gone out 3-4 weeks ago about my stepping down from the board, and wasn't for some reason.
Still only officially 3 members of the RFL.
Yeah, and that's not right though. That's not right. But
2 of whom are observers.
Yes.
And 1 of whom is the CEO.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like the game is in a mess, if I'm honest.
I don't think you're alone.
I think it's in abeyance is probably a better way of putting it. I think a lot of people in the sport feel like they're on hold.
We were saying last week that the concern is announcements are being made, but how do you know that come July, who should be making those announcements and what authority they've got to do that? So we're already talking about there's going to be a Magic Weekend next year, and it's going to be in Newcastle. There's going to be potentially 1, maybe 2 World Club Challenges. There's going to be Las Vegas is going to be announced on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Now, all of that is independent of a concerted board that is making a strategic plan for the sport. Now, they may well be going, yep, that's fine, keep Las Vegas in there. Mm-hmm. But it just seems that anybody can say anything at the moment.
Yeah, well, the board doesn't have a voice, does it? And I think this is one of the criticisms of the RFL generally anyway. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And again, do we know what its terms and conditions are? Do we know in what its brief is? What can it change? Do we know if it's going to be presented to the Rugby League Council but is effectively endorsed by that Rugby League Council? It's like,
who knows?
That's the abeyance bit.
I don't know. As I say, I only went to one board meeting there, and there wasn't much discussed in there of any of that. You know, it was more about the makeup of the board and the structure and stuff like that, because it's had to be hastily put together because of the situation that came about with Simon's departure and then the board's departure. That's not something that happens day in, day out. No. They had to find a new board pretty quickly to fill that gap, and then there's going to be a new board appointed anyway off the back of the review anyway. So, but
if Steve McNamara's got to stand outside the headmaster's office this week, who's the headmaster?
Well, Tony Sutton's CEO, isn't he? You know, ultimately, but
ultimately, it would normally be the board, wouldn't it?
I don't know really. I don't think it is, to be honest. I think in those situations there's a disciplinary process, and it goes through that process. It would be a situation like that is normally handed over to an investigator. The investigator investigates it, speaks to relevant parties, and submits a report back through the usual disciplinary process. So things like that don't, in my opinion, go to the board. It just follows the process. If there was
a major issue within the sport,
well, there is a board, and people on that board would discuss it and determine things. But I don't know. I have no idea what's happening in terms of the working party. You'll probably know far more than me around, you know, our clubs being interviewed, our players being interviewed.
I believe Mr. Wood might be seeing Wigan and Warrington this week.
Well, what are they up to?
Well, I think taking soundings.
But when you do a whole game review, do you not?
Yeah, but how do you do a whole game review in 3 months?
Yeah, I know. Well, to me...
But anyway, you're back, and that's...
Yeah, to me, it hasn't changed my view, and that was my view going into it, with my eyes wide open, which was... It feels from the outside looking in that this feels like a fait accompli. That was my concern, which I raised. And the only reason I accepted it was, not that I have the time necessarily to do it, so it's probably worked out quite well, actually, was more that I didn't want it to be a fait accompli, and I could... you're better inside than outside, trying to influence. And I felt I would have been potentially able to do that and voice an opinion that is a neutral opinion without any vested interest at all, other than for the benefit of the game. So we'll see. I've got my impressions of what that outcome will be. I suspect we'll end up at 14 teams.
Which is again interesting because...
Does that include 2 French teams?
Well, no, but on the horizon is a potential NRL model that has only 10 teams.
Yeah, well...
So again, who's making the decision on that?
Who knows? I don't think anybody really knows what's going on with the NRL, do they? I think it's more likely you'll go to 14 teams with the likes of Salford going, because they've pretty much gone.
But the interesting thing about 14 teams is one of the things that is being discussed, apparently, is... Whilst we quite like what the IMG grading does. We don't quite like it if the team in the championship that finishes top can't get promoted, which could have every hobby to lose the way things are going.
Well, imagine if it was a team
and they are the
with
next
B.
team in grading as well. So all of this, we want 14 teams, but we're not. We don't know who's not happy about having French teams in, but we can maybe tolerate one, but we don't want two. And you end up with two. And the other thing is, I think had Catalan won on Saturday, which, to be fair, they only looked like they might do for 2 minutes in the first half, you would have actually seen the members of the RFL board spontaneously combust.
All three of them.
Well, they've been there before. They've been to the grand final before.
And
The world
time,
doesn't end, does it?
No, but they wanted to impose a £500,000 bond on them.
Yeah.
If they'd got there this time, then with everything being in abeyance and talk of the value of French teams and all that kind of thing, I think some ashen-faced people would have probably been reduced to a pile of...
You didn't even get the chance to get hospitality, which Kevin Nicholas was moaning that the previous board hadn't taken up, or
Hadn't taken up.
No, he was moaning because the previous directors hadn't been to games and stuff.
Okay.
Because that's an important facet of being a director of a sport, is free hospitality.
Right.
And stuff.
As long as it's pie and peas.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it was pie and peas, was it, that was served?
Oh, the good news is the RFL board's broken, but I've fixed the LED board. So.
How many points does this qualify?
I mean, that must be a
think
one
we're
and a
in
quarter.
Super League next year.
I was impressed, I must admit, last week.
I mean, we're slightly below James Graham's podcast, but all the other ones they don't.
If this doesn't attract people in Mexico, I don't know what will.
Well, no. Big in Mexico. Still, we are the number one rugby league podcast in Mexico.
That's because we're champions of Mexican heritage player Guillermo Aspiro Biche.
Who's the new star of rugby league this week?
Funnily enough, the bookies got it right. The bookies.
I don't want to say the bastards, the bookies, but they are, aren't they? They always get it right.
And most people thought over the weekend that Hull KR clearly would be the favourites, as it turned out. Pretty dominant. But most other people you asked thought Lee would win. But the bookies knew.
I can't remember what I went
The
for.
bookies knew.
Is there any other news before we start on all the news? James is back.
Las Vegas has been announced Wednesday. It'll be Leeds and Hull KR
Leeds.
from here.
Is that embargoed? Or is that? No one knows, do they? You just made that up. So
I haven't made it.
Leeds and Leeds and Hull KR then. So Leeds fans, do we know what the date is so people can
Last
book their
weekend in February.
last weekend in February? Book your flights now.
How do those two clubs come about? Just
Well, somebody has to be the home team because they're giving up home
concede at
advantage.
home, yeah.
And I think it was decided that by virtue of the fact that Hull KR don't have as many season ticket holders, they would be the home game. They're also quite a progressive club in taking a game to Amsterdam and getting involved in various other initiatives. So I think they've decided that because they want the profile of Vegas, they will be the home team.
Okay.
And I think Leeds wanted to go but didn't want to be the home team because they've got an average crowd of about 16,000 and that's quite a lot of money to lose on one less home. So I think as soon as Hull KR said will be the home game, Leeds said, and I think they would have liked to have bought Hull along in the same way that Wigan bought Wigan on Wigan bought Warrington and it could have been that local, but they don't feel that Hull are yet at that point. Whereas I think they want to get around about 10,000 fans, like Wigan and Warrington took, and I think they feel that they probably could take about 5,000 each.
Yeah, I would think so.
Get designing your special kits then, because
I don't think we know for certain who the Australian teams are, but I'm led to believe Newcastle Knights will be one of them, which will be Brian McDermott meeting up again with Leeds Rhinos.
potentially Dom Young or potentially not Dom Young, because it might not be that.
Kai Pearce-Paul, or potentially not Kai Pearce.
Phil says there's not enough quality for 12, let alone 14. Andy would go with an 8 or 10 team league max. We'll see what our future overlords from the NRL.
But by the way, my presumption there it was just a guess. There's no inside information in that at all.
Well, I think they could.
Oh, you must have signed non-disclosure agreements.
The thing about 14 teams.
There's nothing to be disclosed to me. We get that far.
The desire for 14 is to be able to drop loop fixtures, so that would still give everybody 13 home games. The problem is, where does Magic Weekend fit into that if you're not having any loop fixtures? But we've already announced we're going back to Newcastle.
Dublin.
So it's like everybody. We've said it every week.
Well,
there's lots of things going on.
Yeah.
but they don't fit together, so we don't know.
When Warrington played Lee Magic, was it?
No, just before.
Before Magic.
Yeah.
And then played in the Cup. Which I know you can't predict the Cup.
Wakefield Cass were 2 league games 3 weeks apart.
Yeah, it's just, I know.
And I think, I didn't check this, I was going to Warrington play Hull KR a week or 2 weeks before Wembley now.
They do, yeah. So that's
a
nonsense of a fixture now.
2 reserve teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, it just doesn't work. And then you get likely that these teams are going to play in the playoff, for example. If you're in a cup final, the chances are you'd expect to be in a playoff. You might draw each other in a playoff, but you end up playing 4 or 5 times a season.
Billy might be from Australia because he says we should be working towards 2 10-team conferences. We're putting in our league.
It always comes back to money.
On the French.
Absolutely.
8 or 10 teams Midlands. In terms of an intense competition, yes.
Goal.
The question is how does that get funded from the club's perspective? And I get the club's argument, but 14, there's a reason we've chopped and changed and we've gone away from 14.
The other thing is, if we still don't know what the likely outcome is of Salford, it looks increasingly as though the party that came in to buy it are not going to buy it, which is going to probably lead to an administration. Now, if that happens and they do get automatically relegated next year, then you're down to 11. It's better to go to 10 in some respects than it is to go to 14. But
you want a buy round at Magic Weekend, do you? Because you want everyone to be there. If you're having a Magic Weekend.
Well, does Magic Weekend then have to be somebody's home game? But these are all details that nobody can honestly say we have a resolution to this because of the hiatus that the game's in at the moment.
Tim sent us a message in Korean. I can't read it because I don't read Korean. Phil's asked, where is James's walk-on music? What would you walk on to? What would be your music?
Walk on to what?
Just come into the podcast.
Oh, okay, I don't know.
What, like the dance?
Yeah. I don't know, ask people for suggestions because I know where we're going.
Jane McDonald.
Yeah. Something like that,
Jane McDonald, no. Billy says, I'm from Batley. I'm not saying do it tomorrow. I'm saying 5 or 10 years. I've got to find it.
I'm not sure we've
got Papua New Guinea.
I'm not sure we've got that amount of time.
Second team in New Zealand.
Who's the second team in New Zealand?
That's who we're bringing into.
Not necessarily.
No.
There could be another team in Queensland.
I don't understand
I
don't understand the idea of 2 10s because 2 10s means you'd
still have cross-conference
20
fixtures.
teams though.
Yeah.
That's 20
that's what Australia's going to because they've got to 19.
Yeah, but you can't do that here.
No, but you start with 10 and then you look to build a second 10, which may include Canadian and American teams.
Oh, not the Canadians. We can't bring back Toronto again. How did their recent comeback do? They've gone now, haven't they?
I don't know what's happening with the community game. I think they've finished their season. There were 6 teams, but I think you're looking at professional franchises rather than a community-based competition.
Bruiser 464. Hopefully that's in reference to the. Is it 464 or 664? 664. Beg your pardon. Must be named after the Amstrad. Great win for Sheffield against Edinburgh at the weekend. Looking forward to a tough semi-final against Halifax on Saturday. Sheffield Eagles beating Edinburgh 78-44, which is a nice preview of what might happen in the Wheelchair Super League later this year, because this is the Wheelchair Challenge Cup, in which London Roosters beat Wigan Warriors,
which was
56-46 away from home.
Yeah, I think that was a surprise.
Setting up the semi-finals of this weekend, is that right? Well, Bruiser thinks it is. Halifax
yes.
Halifax, Sheffield, and Leeds at London. So that'll be exciting. Congratulations to Swinton Lionesses, who, despite losing half their players also... Can anyone still tell us what happened at Swinton? They beat Salford Red Devils 12-4 in the Challenge Shield final.
Derby.
Yeah. So, dancing in the streets of Martin Calder tonight. But that was on at the same time as the York Saints game. So, and Halifax, coached by Amy Hardcastle, who wasn't there, beat Rochdale 44-4 in the plate final. So well done to those teams on lifting silverware.
Talking of things that are on simultaneously.
Everything.
Why? Rhetorical question. Why on earth did we play the Academy Origin game between Yorkshire and Lancashire, which is because there is no England Academy fixtures announced. So this is the pinnacle of our domestic season. Why was that played on Saturday lunchtime at Castleford at the same time at York we had 2 Challenge Cup semi-finals.
You're asking for
logic. No, I'm saying it's a rhetorical question because we're all shaking our head going, how can that happen?
I think we did say last week you could play that at any point. Although we didn't say it on air, but whenever the academy teams play,
you could even play at the end of the season as almost your representative window. But if that's the pinnacle of the youth that are playing this game, surely we need to accord them
should be a curtain raiser to a Super League game, really.
Well, we need to accord them the respect of giving them a game where there can be a crowd that would watch it, and also, with the greatest respect, playing at the best possible facility we can get them to play.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that perhaps they weren't at the best possible facility.
Castleford.
Yes, but do you know it's not a prestigious occasion, is it? If you're playing it,
you're right. I came through when there were Origin games at that level, and when I was sort of touch judging at the academy level, at that stage they had, I think it was Thursday night academy games on live on Sky, I think, or certainly highlights on Sky.
Well, Saturday,
and they were all mainly curtain raisers, and it was a great experience for a referee or such judge, same as a player, to particularly as that second half goes along. The same with the women probably now. You start playing in front of 5,000-10,000 people as people are coming for the game.
Thursday night, the Sky game is St Helens Catalan. We all know that Thursday night Catalan following, understandably, because if it was in reverse, wouldn't be huge. Why not put on an academy representative game where I think there were certainly a handful of St Helens players in the Lancashire squad? You get the opportunity to look at a player who might even feature for England in the 2029 World Cup. We're at that point where they're almost recognisably professional names. Some of them are in first team squads that they're not necessarily making the game day 17 yet, but their names are becoming more and more familiar. We keep going on about we want to promote our stars. Well, these are our futures. These are the best 34 players we've got in the game, and we play them somewhere, out of sight, out of mind.
Somewhere in the Sky archive, there must be, because I remember being there and watching it, and it was on the telly the week after. Yorkshire Lancashire played at Bellevue, so again another great venue to host a game like that, as it was then. Now it's the home of everything, but then it was a dump. Done one stand, and we think we're great now. Chef Walker, I think he's got 5 tries or something. So he's going to be good, and he was. I don't know anyone else who played in that, but could happen.
Haven't really seen the match properly reported.
Yorkshire won, didn't they? Really well. So
convincingly.
Have you had a go at the coach of Lancashire? Assistant coach.
Yeah, I sent him a message straight after.
Did he reply?
I can't tell you what he said.
Oh dear. I need to get in contact with him anyway, don't I?
Changes his name this Thursday.
Is he?
Gets married. Be double barrelled.
Is he? Oh, good for him. These double barrelled people. There's too many of them these days. It's used to be a sign of, well, not class, but everyone's got them. It's no good. Is that all the news? I'm sure there's some other news, because there's no point in us talking about Salford, because it's just pointless, because we do this every week and nothing's changed, and we've pretty much covered them off anyway. And Phil will be depressed anyway because he's a Salford fan. I hope he appreciates the shirt.
Don't want to depress him even more. No, I think the fallout of the games this weekend is the news.
Should we start with the? Let me go for the Championship one first, because they happened. Championship, Batley 12, Bradford 48. Big win for the Bulls as they warm up for their semi-final.
6 in a row.
Halifax 6, Doncaster 30. Well, you didn't see this one coming, did we? Because Halifax have had that great run, and here come Doncaster and spoil the party for the Panthers.
I think again, it's just a little bit of, as we said last week and the week before, it's a bit of regression to the mean for Halifax. They have got off to a brilliant start. They're still well founded for the remainder of the season, but there will be inconsistencies.
London 20, Sheffield Eagles 22, because they've been inconsistent as well, so that's a big win for the Eagles.
Jack Farriman 2 tries on loan from Wigan for London.
They had a couple of Wigan players, didn't they, I think
3 or 4.
Yeah, 3. Oldham 18, Toulouse 30. So again, this is Oldham who spent a lot of money. They were mid-table, they're all right.
A few injuries, yeah.
And Toulouse come on and got a comfortable win. Well, not comfortable win, 12-point win, but good result. Ollie Ashall-Bolt, former Wakefield Trinity fullback, with a hat-trick of tries. Widnes 16, Featherstone 38. Paul Cook must be happy with that.
Hitting form big for the 18-19. The semi-finals this weekend are massive.
We don't know if they're broadcast anyway yet, do we?
Haven't seen it.
'Cause they're on Sunday.
And I think there's only an hour's difference between the
which
kick-off
is a
time.
bit of a-
So again, it makes it hard.
And York usually string their games, so York might. I'm not saying they will, but they might show their game. So the Oldham Fev game is up for. If anyone at Oldham is enterprising, then get that sorted. And York 58, Hunslet 8. 4 tries from Ben Jones Bishop at the age of 400
again,
years old.
Started slowly, but are hitting form at just the right time. So this weekend you've got the prospect of Wembley.
Remind me who's in those games.
York, Bradford.
Oldham Fev.
Two good fixtures.
Yeah.
2 great fixtures.
And Fev, of course, having been beaten, was it by a point or 2 points
2
a couple of weeks
points
ago?
late on.
So.
But the thought of any of those teams getting to Wembley is really attractive. You know, Bradford and what they're trying to do in terms of getting the brand back up to nearer where it used to be. Featherstone, who having been there a couple of weeks ago, to go to Wembley would be massive for the town. Oldham never been to Wembley.
Really?
Yeah, and York, who again are just under this river. Mark Applegarth is just a great story to take a team to Wembley.
I'm more interested in the women's and the 1895 final than the men's final, which I know shouldn't be the way it works, but I'm more intrigued in that. But Andy says, let's talk wire. You played in the last game of the weekend. We'll come to you. Andy. In League One. League One.
They've won a game. They haven't won a final.
Won nothing yet. Won nothing yet. Sam, calm down. League One. Keighley 6, Workington 46.
What's happened?
I don't know.
They've changed the coach.
Well, I was looking at some comments on Facebook yesterday.
Well, it's all because of these bloody flags, isn't it, James? If they didn't have these flags around, they'd be winning all the games. That's
the fact that the flags were there when they were winning all the games,
it's not as good as
it's
score.
irrelevant.
No, it doesn't work like that, does it? No, but I did see Jake Webster replying to comments and Jack Miller replying to comments.
Don't do that.
No,
It's a slippery
just
slope.
don't go there. Don't go there.
Don't do that.
Because you'll never win the argument.
No.
The only way you win the argument is start winning on field.
It's just been the most bizarre start to the season.
Yeah,
The squad is
don't know.
better than that.
You'd expect so. I don't know the squad well enough, but yeah, it's difficult obviously when a new coach comes in, and I think that coach came in fairly late in the day, didn't they?
I think it was 2 or 3 games into the season.
Oh no, that's right. They moved Jake on after.
Yeah. And then they brought in an interim. Now they brought in Alan Kilshaw.
Just isn't the way to build steady foundations.
But you can't see progress at them. It's not like they're getting closer in every game.
No.
You know, that's losing at home by what did you say?
40 points. Yeah. They're the Watford Football Club of Rugby League.
Well, I'm not
chopping and changing.
Alan Kilshaw has his ways of coaching.
And you've got to have the players that he wants to play the way he wants to play.
You've got to take your players with you. I mean, I don't know whether he has or he hasn't, but my impression was that I think they made a lot of errors yesterday, something like 12 errors that came up on social media. Like, you think, well, that's players not going out there and performing, but are they not performing for a reason that's going on behind the scenes? I don't know. But from the outside looking in, it doesn't look good, does it?
Rochdale 10, Midlands Hurricanes 22.
Great result for Midlands. I mean,
Been winding each other up all week, the owners on social media.
Until Cornwall's record was expunged, Rochdale were top.
Expunged.
But Midlands, they're
making
different
steady
Midlands.
progress, aren't they?
You look at them and you go.
Second in the
I have
table,
a question.
level on points with
Talking of Midlands,
Where's Jake Mama?
No.
I should put on the board, shouldn't I? Actually.
It's I don't know if it's been formally confirmed yet, but Huddersfield's game against Wigan.
Oh, is it Dewsbury?
Can't be at Huddersfield because the Stereophonics are playing. So they're looking
Bloody
for
hell,
an
that's a terrible
alternative
reason,
venue, and apparently that venue is Dewsbury.
Only was reading on Twitter, people are saying it's Dewsbury, but I don't know.
Apparently it is. Why would you not take that game to Birmingham? Take it on the road.
I thought they would have taken it to Halifax since they've bought the
Well,
ground, haven't they?
I think they're putting a new pitch down.
Yeah, I
so
thought that
that's
was probably
part
the
of it.
case. Yeah.
But, here is an opportunity.
Dewsbury round.
Certainly one of those two clubs is a progressive club who wants to, played in Vegas, wants to play in Dublin.
Well, all the Huddersfield fans are going to, go down the road to Dewsbury because it's only a few down.
But how much lack of ambition does that say? I mean, nobody's decrying the job that Ken Davey has done to keep Huddersfield afloat, but to take a Super League game to Dewsbury, what's the capacity at Dewsbury?
According to Wikipedia,
People were saying 5,000.
5,100 says Wikipedia,
Right.
but I mean,
Well, look, I mean, they did struggle to get 5,000, I think.
Not playing Wigan, I don't think they will.
What, Huddersfield? You think they will? On a Sunday afternoon?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what they
But
get
if you took that game to the Alexandra Stadium, where Midlands
you Google that. Cause
we're making, Midlands are doing a great service for Rugby League at the moment in terms of putting down an expansion footprint that looks sustainable. Would you not, as a game, support them and say, look,
let's go.
We'll bring a Super League game. You can if you can get 1,000 people there.
Anyway,
why not?
Take it to goal. There's no novelty to going to Dewsbury, because Wigan played them in the cup a few years ago.
But again,
it's not like one Wakefield had their tour last year. We're off all these places.
It's a tidy ground, but is it a Super League facility?
How many ING points did they get?
And don't all of the Super League games are filmed now.
Mm.
So Sky Plus is going to go to Dewsbury to film a Super League game.
It'll look good with the
cherry and white.
No, the stanchions. It's always good if you refereed there and you were hoping that decision that was questionable was
nobody could
hidden
quite see
behind
it.
the stanchion.
Phil's been on. They can't take it to Birmingham. There's crowd restrictions. I mean, Phil, it's a Huddersfield game. But yeah, I mean, there must be a million other places in this country.
Right, so they got, when they played Wigan, sorry I'm interrupting, 11th of May they played, round 11 last year at home, they lost 648, 5,334. So there's 333 people who are going to be standing outside Dewsbury not able to get in.
You can stand across the road on one of them hills.
But
they probably get more people for a car boot on a weekend than go to this game on.
Why?
When you look at their crowds last year, though, actually they had 6,800 for their opening game of the season at home to Saints. 5,000, 1,600, 4,000, 5,000, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4.
We've turned into a number station.
It was like the second highest attendance, or
But
thereabouts, third highest attendance last
It
year.
seems such a lack of ambition.
I agree, but
The spies.
And I just don't know if Dewsbury's cut out to be a Super League facility. And so people are going to say, but Castleford and all that. But, is that really the best we can do? Could we not have used it as a promotional on-the-road fixture?
But is this something that's been organised? It just all seems like it's come at a surprise that Stereophonics are rocking up to do a concert. Surely that's been booked in months in advance.
Okay, I've got Coldplay playing down there this summer, haven't they?
Yeah, it was announced ages ago. Long enough ago for us to be a little bit more imaginative about what we did with that fixture. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw
No, it's okay. That's the news. All the people now, all the spies tuning in on rugbyleague.com, hearing James's numbers there, thinking, where's this on my one-time pad? What's this? Number stations, if you're not aware of them. The conspiracy theories. It's great. Whitehaven 42, Gould 24. There you go. That was that. There's only one fixture in League One this week.
It's so
I don't know
random,
why.
League One.
North Wales versus Newcastle.
I know Cornwall
It just
was drawing
exists.
hasn't
It just
helped,
exists.
but
Yeah, no.
But it just exists.
well, yeah, I think Midlands game was their first for a month.
Can't
Because
have a
they'd been
professional
due to
competition
play
like that,
Cornwall
can
and
you?
they had the bye week and the division didn't play for a week and
Well, we didn't have a week off for Magic the other week, or the
There
semi-finals
was a-
of the Challenge Cup.
There was a week off.
So they've got the semi-finals of the Challenge
Yeah.
Cup this week, which are on telly.
Yeah.
They could have moved these fixtures. All these teams playing yesterday aren't playing on Sunday, so they could have played those games next week when there's not a
But if you add up the
challenge.
amount of people that were at those games for those who
Well, I can't because attendance wasn't given at one of
for those who gave an attendance,
Yeah.
all of those people couldn't go and watch a semi-final
About
or chose
1,400.
not to watch a semi-final.
Yeah, 1,400. So it would have made much difference.
No, but
But yeah,
if you add up the
They could have tuned in
but if you add
and-
up the championship ones as well,
yeah.
there's probably
We're stupid, aren't
there's
we?
probably
We are.
10, 15,000 fans that were at games that weren't the semi-finals.
We are stupid.
I know we've ended up obviously with 13 in Championship. I had to remind myself there's been that many changes. 13 teams in Championship and 10 in League One. So how does that ever get balanced up again?
Well, it was supposed to be 12 in each.
Well, obviously, and then they went to the wall.
Well, we can't. I
Well,
was going to say delete
the
3
review
teams.
will come
Don't
up
we
with that,
can't
'cause
do
you,
that.
you know what the review's going to say. We're going to
Bring Bradford
Kick out the
in.
French.
No, they're
Bring
gonna
Widnes in.
So
Get
that's-
Spencer
whatever-
Salford.
whatever-
whatever's left after how many teams we decide is going to be in Super League, there will be 2 regionalised championships.
We can't kick out Chorley, Nottingham, and Trafford Borough or wherever it was again, now can we? All of which are
I'm not convinced about that as an idea because if you're Keith there that at the moment are getting or Newcastle that haven't won a game yet, playing teams in League One, playing the likes of York or Halifax, Toulouse.
So this regional, the south is London, Sheffield, Toulouse.
No, it would be
East and West.
And then with those travel teams.
But London's on the east unless they move to that side of London.
Well, it depends where they
Toulouse on the east.
Depends numerically which division they need them to play. Leeds once played in the Lancashire Cup.
We're still not talking about Warrington, Andy. Women's semi-finals. Leeds 14, Wigan 44.
That sounded a surprise result. Obviously, you watched that. I didn't see any of it. So
I think the margins are surprised. I think the bookies had Wigan as slight favourites because of the fact that Leeds have lost a fair amount of established talent. They're relying a little bit more on their academy coming through, and Wigan under Dennis Betts have recruited shrewdly. They've bought 4 Aussies into their squad, and they weren't a million miles away last year. And I think the additions that they've made and the experience from last year, and Dennis still being there as the coach, but I think the importance of that result is more there are now definitely 4.
Yeah, it's great for the competition. Yeah. Exactly that.
All those young players at Wigan who were in the squad last year got a whole year experience.
Yeah. It feels though unfortunate that although I didn't watch the Saints York game, that would have made a great final.
I think Wigan Saints is going to be a great final. I think it really the thing that was so impressive about Wigan won it in the first half. They were 30-0 up at half time. They realised that whilst Leeds had their full choice pack out, virtually all of their 3 quarters were not their first choice, which is down to injury, and they hit them wide and fast early. Racked up. So Anna Davis scored the first 2 tries. She's arguably the best finisher in the women's game, and really, they were dominant to get the ball out wide. And when they got it out wide, Leeds had no answer to it. That's great tactics from Dennis and his team, and great execution. And they'd won it by half time. The second half was 14-all, which showed a little bit of what Leeds, some spirit, but clearly a lot of work to do. But it was more dominant than most people were expecting.
Couldn't get anywhere near Emily Vivers on that try, could they?
No.
Just wandered through the...
But again, that's the difference, that Wigan now have Emily Vivers on the bench, who just come out of the NRL and is a Papua New Guinea international. So the quality they've got is greater than it has been, and it showed.
Leeds in transition. It's that magic word, because they haven't replaced Courtney Winfield Hill and Georgia Rodge. And that's from 3 years
They brought in Mel Howard, who's played State of Origin, NRLW, and was trying to do too much as the game was slipping away. The other thing that both of these women's games showed was this is the first time that those clubs have had an intense opponent this year. All of the games leading up to it, they've won easily in the Challenge Cup. The format just hasn't helped. So I think Mel Howard hadn't played in a game like that over here. Didn't really know sort of who she was facing. Was trying overly to influence the game. Made a cardinal sin of not finding touch with a penalty, which I think York did as well, didn't they? If only the cameras had been following it. Those are the kind of things. If you're ever going to win a semi-final, they just can't be in your game. Yeah.
It's good that they let the work experience people on the women's game and then leave them on for the men's game as well on the BBC sometimes.
I do think that is a signature game for Wigan, and that they can go in. I think you were saying, are they bookies' favourites for the...
I don't know if they are. Some people are making them favourites. If they were, I'd be back in St Helens. Or we'll know more this Friday, won't they, when they play York at home.
Yes, and Leeds play Saints.
They do, on Saturday, which is on the sports matches of... And on Sunday, it's Lee versus Barrow and Warrington versus Huddersfield, which brilliant. It doesn't have a kick-off time. So, could kick off any point. Just turn up at Vicky Park in Warrington.
Yes, and, get there at 9.
Get there.
And a game will happen.
Some rugby will appear eventually. Leeds will be back. They always are.
They've got some forwards to come back. So,
and Wigan are really good. And it's good because there's 4 teams now are competitive. Yeah. And you couldn't predict the semi-finals. And you can't predict the final necessarily. And we don't know who's going to win anything, which is good. That's what we want. Haven't you put Leeds 4th in the magazine anyway? Yeah. So it's gone as you would have thought. Well, I would have thought so.
I just think the margin, and particularly that
the margin.
That first half display was
it.
so good that Leeds couldn't live with it.
And they will play St Helens, and that's a game everyone knows about from the men's game, and you can sell that to people.
Well, I think there is a genuine. We want to build rivalries, don't we? So
it's the problem with the Saints Wigan women's derbies. They're all too friendly, because from my understanding, that semi-final there was a lot of stuff on that between Saints and York, and I think they're too friendly, Saints and Wigan. So we need to start some trash talk between the pair.
I'm sure we can get Dennis to do that.
But York, St Helens 10, York 6. So again, York miss out on the trip to Wembley. So not that their season's over, because of course they're going for 3 straight Super League titles. 2-0 at half time. Game decided by penalties, goal kicks. Don't talk about penalties yet.
The Rhiannon Marshall hit the post would have made it 2-2. Just at the time when probably York had more ascendancy in the game than late on, when they just couldn't find a move that was going to break St Helens down. But again, York have got some new players in key positions. Yes. Hasn't quite gelled yet. Saints, when you get Amy Hardcastle, Shona Hoyle back, and you've already got a really settled squad, it didn't weaken it. So I'm really looking forward to them meeting at Wembley.
Big loser out of that, of course, is Tara Jones, because she probably could have refereed the final, but she can't referee St Helens, can she? So I want to thought so anyway.
Could she referee?
I don't know. Is the honest answer?
Probably not having played for them. That's different to coming from somewhere. if the players she's refereeing are her ex-teammates,
it's not that we're saying she would be,
but
easy. That would be the.
She's no longer affiliated to the club, though, is she?
No, but she knows all those players so well.
I know. I don't know. I think
it would be a hell of an ask.
If it was Tara, she would have probably been cheering on York, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
There were. Some people saying she's been fast tracked through, but she was refereeing for years before she retired as a player. It's like you don't pay any attention, do you? I know she's a full time official now.
I wouldn't say it's been fast tracked. I think
it's just people want to just criticise people.
I think the women's game is growing, and therefore we should, and it's only right that we have female officials as well. So I think it is right, and I think it's right that she's in the full time squad, but she will progress because she's in that squad and she's getting much more access to coaching, and so she will improve.
She's doing Championship and League One games,
and I've not seen a referee, in fairness, but I think the feedback has been positive around her performances, so she will improve.
It's all sounding different.
Maybe she'll get the 1895.
There was a few high shots in that Saints York game, I thought, which were, if it was the men, might have been cards and stuff, but weren't. And also an interesting point, not interesting. Emily Rudge bleeding everywhere, stuck the cotton bud up her nose, but they didn't ask her to change her shirt, which has got blood on it.
They should have done. Yeah. Although you see men changing a shirt on a pitch.
I know, there's a slightly different, it's a slightly different thing, but you can still disappear off, come back. Get the screens up like the racing, that kind of thing. But Saints versus Wigan at Wembley, 11:45 in the morning.
Bit early.
Is that not what time it always kicks off at Wembley? Yeah.
It's for the BBC.
Yeah. So. On BBC Two, so at least we'll get some proper coverage as opposed to the semi-finals, which was a waste of time. Half time, nothing. But I'm sure the Legends of Welsh Sports series is brilliant. I'm sure it's absolutely superb. I'd love to learn more about Mark Hughes, but I'd rather have some analysis of my rugby league that I'm just watching rather than that. And I've been on the BBC this weekend, so I'm a big fan.
It's a good time to put the kettle on.
Big fan of the BBC. Hello to all our listeners from BBC Radio Jersey. So that's the women's semi-finals, and it's the women's Super League gets underway this week. Go back and watch the preview we did about 3 months ago of the season, or read the latest.
I was thinking that the preview for the season was ages ago, wasn't it?
Well, the launch.
Yeah.
When a Cardiff back in action, now we sponsor one. It's demons. Evening to LG, who's just joined us. Right, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Not you, Andy, because we're good. Hull Kingston Rovers versus Catalan Dragons. So I was at the snooker on Saturday, And the great thing about being at the snooker is you can sit there and watch rugby league in the background and no one... Because the snooker's just going
Presumably
on.
not with the sound.
Well, I had my headphones in because I was doing a radio show at the same time. So I was trying to do 3 things at once.
Talking about multitasking.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I could virtually be a woman. Hull Kingston Rovers versus Catalan Dragons. I'm paying attention to the telly, bizarrely. And here comes Steve McNamara. Hang on, where's my book? Steve McNamara, Rugby League Coaching Manual. Blaming referees. Where's that in the... Because he comes on before the game and says, we're at a neutral venue. Well done, Steve. Well done for spotting that. It's a semi-final. All 3 teams need to play well. All Kingston Rovers, Catalan Dragons, the match officials. And then in the press conference afterwards, which the team was pissed off. Is that what he said? Is that a direct quote from Steve McNamara? Because his team got 1 penalty for Mikey Lewis kicking the ball out on the full or whoever it was. Set himself up there, didn't he? It was convenient. I mean, he also said, "Oh yeah, we weren't very good at blah 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 blah." But mainly it's the the penalties and stuff. It's not in the book. So and now he's going to be investigated by the rugby by
whoever is left at the Etihad.
But we mentioned that letter from Martin Coy to the amateur clubs, community clubs earlier in the programme, and I was going to read it and I can't find it. All that work is undermined by Steve McNamara coming out on the telly and saying, referees, touch judges, timekeepers. Same as Hull Kingston Rovers. A couple of weeks ago on their club commentary, what's he called? Jack Smith. Jack Smith costing the game against Wigan. Jack Smith. We're just going to copy that now.
I think if you're going to make pronouncements like that, you've got to do it from a position of strength. Having lost a semi-final, you're not at your strongest. Mm-hmm. That said, not condoning any of it.
Here's a caveat.
I thought he had a point. Because certainly Hull KR did deserve to win that game. There is no question of that. But
24 points is a lot to...
Well, but the only time Catalan looked as though they were going to perhaps cause some issue was if they'd gone in at half-time 12-10 ahead. They'd come back from 10-0 down, they got it back to 12-10, they were physically dominating the game at that point. And Elliot Whitehead gave away a penalty. It was ridiculously captain's challenged, which they lost. They then gave away a set restart, and on the back of that, Hull KR scored, and were never in danger from that moment. So, after the game, you look at, was there an even spread of 6 agains and penalties? Because it's very rare that a team goes through an entire game and doesn't make a mistake. And the facts would say, because I remember writing it down after an hour, it was hot and you could tell that the Catalan pack was visibly wilting, and that's to the credit of the fitness of Hull KR. But that was the time when the 4th set restart was given and Catalan hadn't had one. And a big pack that's wilting, it's going to lead to points. When you look at the penalty count, it's 4-1, and that one is a technical offence. So in terms of the way Hull KR have played, it's 4-0. I think he has some grounds to make that comment. How he makes it, when he makes it, whether it sounds like sour grapes or not, that how he said it, all of that should be investigated. But I do think he had a point in making it.
So you're appointed now to referee Catalan's trip to St Helens on Thursday. Is that in the back of your mind?
No. You just go out and referee what's in front of you. It's nothing new. It feels like it's the poor old French. That's the tone that comes across.
Yeah.
I had a WhatsApp. I don't know whether it was true or not, but with a fine on the bus. You never know these days whether it's AI, do you? And it just but it was at least amusing that there's some sort of conspiracy. You think the coach
driver might know where to, and it'd be a very brave traffic warden that will put a ticket on a team bus.
You have got to question everything though. That is true.
But you cannot say that hasn't been generated to rub salt into a wound.
What I would say is I didn't see the 80 minutes. I've seen a couple of incidents from the game. So I've seen 2 video calls from the game. That's all I've seen of the game, really. So I can't comment because without watching the 80 minutes and reviewing the performance, you can't comment about individual stuff. What I would say is the comments were inappropriate in my opinion. They shouldn't be voiced in public. There are channels for that where he can voice those concerns.
Yes.
I would question what he's insinuating by what he says.
Yeah, I think what he was saying was the RFL didn't want us to get to Wembley, and the referee made sure we didn't get to Wembley, and that is a terrible conspiracy theory.
Well, that's what I read into it, and I think that's entirely disrespectful. You know, my last ever Super League game. You'll remember it very well because I told you in the airport it would be my last ever Super League game.
You did.
Leeds at Catalan, and what was I accused of, or what was insinuated
coming over on the plane with the team
that went away with the victory.
Yeah.
So it is nothing new. We've been here, we've seen it, we've heard it time and time again. It's easy. You're an easy target as a match official. You know, a French team playing in an English competition. Yes, it was a neutral venue, but played in a country that's not neutral. Well, you know, that's the competition. He wasn't complaining. The club weren't complaining when they got to Wembley, or when they won the Challenge Cup. They weren't complaining when they got to the grand final.
They gave him a £500,000 bond.
No, but do you know what I mean?
No,
there either is an agenda, or there isn't.
The problem is when you mix the two up, you lose the point about there were 8 stoppages in play, all of which went to one team. And that's unusual.
What I would say is, generally speaking, I think from a referee's perspective, to not award a team a penalty or set restart in a game is difficult to do. It's not impossible. I think as a referee, you leave yourself wide open for exactly that criticism that has come Chris Kendall's way, because he's given him an opportunity to say that.
Yeah.
So what you end up doing though as a referee, if you're not careful though, is you then have to find decisions to be seen to be balanced, when it actually in your mind
you ref it as you see it.
In your mind, you're thinking, well, actually, what Chris has probably thought is, well, actually, Hull KR's, they're not perfect, but they'll be far more disciplined than Catalan.
Their physical
and actually,
dominance.
I could find a load more decisions against Catalan than I have done, and I haven't done. And the other thing is when you referee and you don't give many decisions, so I don't know what the total numbers are, but
4-1 penalties, 4-0 set restart.
Right. So a relatively low number. You can soon have an imbalance.
Yeah.
You know, if you give 10 penalties and it's 7-3 or something,
which looks more equitable.
Yeah. But
isn't.
You can soon have an imbalance, is what I would say.
And I also think that the physical dominance of the Hull KR pack induced some of those set restarts. You know, Catalan were clinging on for dear life in a knockout game, and probably every one of those decisions is justified. You just think that Hull KR probably did stray offside once. The markers probably weren't square once.
They could have been offside at the kick-off.
Well, they will have done. But
and the balance will have been: do I stop the game?
What you do as a referee is you then think, well, hang on a minute. What else has the other team done that I've not given and chosen not to give because I'm trying to, create an open flowing game and not puncture the game too much.
Which is what we want. We've seen semi-finals and finals and grand finals do tend to have that leeway in them.
A referee is there not balance in a performance from a referee is not about even numbers.
No,
it's about refereeing the game with what you're presented with. But equally, I think from a self-preservation perspective, as a referee, you need to be mindful of actually, I'm going to leave myself wide open to be criticised if I don't give a single decision that way, because there won't be a team that's been perfect. Yeah. There will be an imbalance in a game because one team's better than the other.
Yeah.
You know, if there's an imbalance in possession, you're more likely to concede when you're defending than you are attacking, aren't you? So, yeah, I think though in terms of the comments, they're distasteful, is what I would say, and I know he was pissed off, quoted him,
and said it.
And and I get that, and it must be hard for a coach going in after the game in front of journalists to answer questions, and I get that, but I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's respectful. And then when it comes in the back of a week where there has been a letter gone out to all clubs in the community game about behaviour and standards, and
and withdrawing referees because of what's happening.
And I was heard of a story only a few weeks ago in the city where we're sitting, where a referee was hounded. His parents didn't dare go in to the club for fear of getting involved. They stayed out of the club, not knowing the safety of their child, in that club who's a match official, totally out of order. But when you see comments like that in the media from people at the top of the game, it doesn't help.
And Hull were deserving winners.
And they will play Warrington in the final, which Andy's got a rumour. Rumour is the Challenge Cup final is moving to the first week in May for 2026. Well, it's more than a rumour, but I can't tell you where it came from. Who do we know who knows? Andy. Andy, wait. You can tell us in confidence.
It was always intended to move to it in May, wasn't it?
But that's interesting then for the schedule in a Magic weekend.
And the start of the women's season. How do you fit all this in?
Well,
when's the wheelchair cup?
Well, I don't understand the women's state of origin because
game
two is this week and the season hasn't started yet.
But they're Australians. They can handle it. They're the best in the world.
But I think we should pay tribute to the way Hull played because they again blitz start, went ahead, looked like they were in total control. Catalan scored a great try through Remy Smith and then perhaps had an element of fault. I mean, Steve McNamara didn't say, wasn't it great that the video referee overturned an on-field decision of no try and we got a try out of that. So the 12-10 down, the stadium atmosphere. I don't know what we wanted out of summer rugby, but we got it on certainly on Saturday. A full stadium, real great weather, colourful, fast track. It didn't matter that 99% of the fans were supporting one of the teams. Just the atmosphere was fantastic. And Hull KR found another gear, responded second half so strong. Their bench and their rotation of it, brilliant. They've got an added dimension now in Bill Leyland coming off the bench because he's given them even more speed out of dummy half than Jez Litton does. So Jez can go out and absolutely, give everything for 65 minutes. And they're bringing a young guy on who looks like he's got all the skills. Whitbread, Tanganoa, doesn't matter whether they start or come off the bench, they're making a difference. Hadley was immense again, never gets the credit for it. And Mikey Lewis did what he had to do to make sure that his team got back to Wembley. So, that's the truth of how good they were and not that Catalan were penalised out of the game.
And what it has set up is what people are already calling the Leyland final. Because Ollie Leyland's Warrington, I just checked to see he wasn't injured, he was in the 18. Ollie Leyland's Warrington will take on Hull Kingston Rovers in the final after beating Lee Leopards 21-14. So
it's the Tony Smith final, isn't it?
Tony Smith final. Any other connections, Hull KR and Warrington, send them in now. I'm sticking with the Leyland final. I didn't see as much of this as the other game, but I thought it was more. From what I saw, I felt this was more comfortable than the final scoreline suggested. I don't know if that's me just getting the complete wrong end of the stick on this one, but a good performance from Warrington. They're in the final. They're taking on Hull Kingston Rovers.
I think in some respects you're right that they never looked like they were anything other than holding Lee at arm's length.
But both semi-finals and yesterday at St Helens, in the same sense that the team who were in front and won, I didn't necessarily look.
Just thought that clearly Mark Sneed was brought in to do a job, and his job was to kick the goals, which
he hasn't been doing in the last few weeks.
Very important.
But that drop goal.
But also to make sure that he didn't get involved in too much physical contact, but the team were always playing at the right end of the field. Did that fantastic, and did that on the back of in the first set that he tried to do it, he conceded a try. Didn't phase him. That was one aspect, clearly. The other, I thought, was that in big games, big players shine. And the big players for Warrington were people like Stefan Ratchford, who didn't get the credit he deserved. I thought his marshalling of the defensive line was absolutely brilliant. A couple of the tackles he made where he came in field and spotted danger and snuffed it out. I thought James Harrison off the bench didn't get enough credit because everybody quite rightly was looking at Paul Vaughan and saying Vaughan has had the most amazing 20 minutes. That's back to the Paul Vaughan when he first arrived here. Almost, took on the entire league pack on his own. Brilliant. But I thought Harrison off the bench was sensational. And the Josh Thewlis tackle to deny Ipape. Again, one of the great try-saving tackles. A complete mismatch. Ipape rarely gets stopped from close in. He's such a squat, powerful guy. And Thewlis not only got over and stopped him, but came from his wing to do it under the posts. It happened so quickly that I'm not sure that gets the credit it deserved. But when Warrington are playing like that, there was nothing Lee could have done to break them down. I thought Lachlan Lamb was poor. I thought the outside Lee backs looked as though they weren't communicating properly. And Warrington did everything you would expect of a team that had some key players missing to play to their strengths.
It's the beauty of cup competitions, isn't it? Because Warrington, who have had an average season in Super League, have been dreadful in some games, very good in others, and now in the final, chance of silverware. You've got this great battle now, Mark Sneyd versus Mikey Lewis. That's another hat we can hang on this final. And Mark Sneyd going for a third Lance Todd trophy.
You've also got Hull KR are now in a position where they need to win.
They do.
They've done everything that they've done to build the club up from initially being in the Championship to becoming a credible force in Super League to get into finals. They now need to go that extra step. Yeah. And you're looking at a Warrington team that last year were in this exact same game, what became arguably their biggest game of the season, and disappeared. So what have they learnt from last year? If Sam is going to go back to the NRL as being more rumoured every week, he needs to go back with a bit of silverware under his arm. So what a great final.
It's an intriguing final.
What a great final.
I think it should be a good final. I think last year was terrible.
Yeah, it was over earlier.
Yeah. Warrington can't... I would say Warrington can't play as bad as they did.
No.
So I think they will improve.
2 yellow cards, which again... Yeah. Set a tone for the game as to what was going to be allowed and what wasn't. People became a bit inhibited, but this stage,
I think Hull KR have had to their chances, to be quite honest.
Well, they'll go in his favours, won't they?
I would expect so. I'd expect so.
Pressure.
But again, you've got people like Matt Duffy who may well be inconsistent week to week, but in a big game this weekend.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it, with Warrington?
Can he bring that game to Wembley? Because again, he could be unplayable on that surface if he can bring his A game.
You look at Vegas. You look at the cup final last year,
which is why they've got to be better.
Yeah.
So it's intriguing for the neutral.
It is.
And we've got a month of build up to it,
which is great. And they played each other 2 weeks before.
Oh, by the way, just snipping back to Catalan and Kiri. I don't know whether he covered Kiri's comments last week. Probably
we didn't, did we?
But I mean, did he not kick the ball out on the full? Well,
I mean,
both teams did it, by the way, but
I think we sort of did speak about. There was a lot on social media, and there was a lot. The thing is,
the other thing I would say though,
that sounded to me like somebody who wanted to get a contract back in the NRL.
I know that, but equally, there were some things in there that actually he was probably telling the truth.
Yeah.
But also people don't always like somebody else saying that.
He's only been playing in the competition for 9 weeks, so he's not the right.
No, exactly.
He's not got the background to make some of those comments. And he came over here with Ireland, and he signed a very lucrative contract to be in this competition. There's a touch of the Gerald Ratners about what he said.
Completely. He's put a target on his back now, hasn't he? Well, okay, if you're that good, then why are you missing that tackle, or why are you not kicking the ball, within the field of play, or whatever.
He didn't dominate the game to the extent that Mikey Lewis did when Mikey was needed to take Hull KR to Wembley. He was there and did it. Yeah. Kiri didn't.
The other thing I would say,
what he said isn't contingent on his performances.
No, is that journalists will sort of say, "Oh, you get bored of hearing the same thing." So actually, having somebody that's prepared to have an opinion.
Apparently he said it a while ago, and it was taken a little bit out of context, which is always going to be the case.
Like when James Hassan was taken out of context by me by quoting him directly, that kind of thing.
But
don't forget,
there are too many games. I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it was. There are too many games in the competition which are not to the standard of the competition, which is why I'm a believer that 12 is too many clubs.
But Melbourne Storm 60, West Tigers 64.
I was going to 64.
West Tigers 0.
Yes.
Let's disband the NRL. Let's shut it down.
You'll always have games
get
like
back.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I just didn't feel he was qualified enough to make the comments that he made because he hasn't been here long enough.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that Catalans have got a lot of their eggs in the basket of Luke Keary, who had he retired,
Yes.
and Sam Tompkins, who definitely has retired, has only got one leg.
Yeah. May not play again.
Again.
He's got an infection in his knee.
Bloody hell. So Mark Sneed can join. Who was the only other player to win?
Sean Long.
Sean Long, to win 3 Landstod trophies. A few players have done it twice, but no one has done it 3 times apart from Sean Long. But that depends on how Warrington do in the final.
Well, and also George Williams gave a hint when he was doing the sideline stuff on the BBC that he might actually be fit for it, which again would change the dynamic of the game.
So it won't be the Leyland final.
So Sneed didn't play for Salford in the cup, did he? Then, because when I thought, oh, is he not cup tied?
No. No, I think he was one of the ones that didn't. They picked a strong team, but he wasn't in it. Callum Watkins, I don't think, was in it.
Right. I can't remember.
No, he's definitely.
Well, he obviously wasn't because he played, but it just surprised me.
LG says there were some shocks in the championship. We went through the championship earlier, and there certainly was. Well, certainly in terms of the scorelines, perhaps, but Doncaster being the highlight of those. Josh Hewlett was a fullback through his academy, so he defends like a fullback, says Andy. Never in doubt.
I don't know. Coming